I want to tell you what this podcast is, why it exists, and the approach that sits underneath everything I'm writing, everything I pay attention to, and honestly, all the questions that come up in and around my life as it unfolds before me. I call this the Help Self process, and it's simple. I'm going to warn you right now, simple does not always mean easy. This show is about the psychology of certainty, the way being right feels like relief, the way being right can feel like safety, the way being right becomes identity. Because somewhere along the way, being right stopped being an opinion and it started being a weapon. It became a drug, a coping skill, a self-preserving strategy. And our culture is full of it. But I don't want to start with the culture. I want to start with me. Because the truth is, I'm that guy. I'm the guy who needs to be right, the guy who needs the last word. I'm the guy who needs to be certain. And even when I am right, it often costs me something. It costs me connection, it costs me peace, it costs me curiosity, and it costs me love. So this podcast is my attempt to study the problem behind the problems. Not just what we should believe, but what is happening inside us when we find ourselves needing to be right? And what does it look like when we stop? So here's the process. 5 steps. It almost sounds too clean, but I swear it's not. Step 1, hold the question. Step 2, don't rush the answer. Step 3, observe what comes up. Step 4, let the muddy mind water settle. Step 5, act in clarity. Now, if you've heard this and you're thinking, okay, that sounds like mindfulness. Yes, it does. But this process is more than just being mindful. This is a behavioral and philosophical practice of noticing what your mind does when it needs to be certain. Because when the mind needs certainty, it does not behave like a scientist. It behaves like a defense attorney. It searches for evidence that it's right. It ignores evidence that it's wrong. It gathers witnesses. It builds a case. And then it calls that truth. But I'm not trying to be a defense attorney for my own ego anymore. I'm trying to see clearly. So let's break down these 5 steps. Number 1, hold the question. Holding the question means when you feel uncertain, when you feel challenged, when you feel that itch to prove something, you don't immediately scratch it. You don't immediately discharge the discomfort, because the discomfort is information. It tells you what you care about. It tells you where your identity is, and it tells you what you're attached to. So instead of immediately exploding outward, you hold it. Number 2, don't rush the answer. First answer is usually the panic answer. First answer is the ego answer. The first answer is the make this feeling stop answer. Most of the time when we rush the answer, we rush towards certainty. And certainty feels like control. The certainty is often just emotional relief. Number 3, observe what comes up. This is where things get real. Because when you observe what comes up, you start noticing patterns. You start noticing, I always blame. I always defend. I always shut down. You start seeing the behavior chain. Number 4, let the muddy mind water settle. This is one of my favorite parts of the whole process. Because the mind gets muddy the second it feels threatened. It stirs itself up. It creates arguments. It creates catastrophic stories. It creates certainty. But if you stop stirring, clarity returns. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped interfering. Number 5, act from clarity. And then you act. Not from panic, not from ego, not from fear, from clarity. From the part of you that isn't trying to win. That's the whole thing. That's the process. Now, why did I build it? Because I didn't start this journey as a philosopher. I started down this path as a human being looking into suffering and seemingly unbreakable behavior habits. And my books came out of this practice. So what I want to do now is walk you through these 4 books, not like an advertisement, more like a map, because each book represents a different layer of the same struggle. Life in Chains was the beginning. And that book came from something that is both depressing and freeing. We are chained. And not in some poetic way, in a behavioral way. Your day is not random. Your behavior is patterned. It's reinforced. It's triggered. And what I realized was most people think they're failing because they're weak. But a lot of people aren't weak. They're just trapped in a chain they don't see. One link leads to another. And the mind tells a story like, yeah, I chose this. But did you? Or was your behavior cued? Were you tired? Were you stressed? Were you seeking relief? Were you escaping discomfort? Because as a behavior analyst, I could not escape the obvious. Behavior functions on and in the world. And function is not always what we say it is. It's what works out for our behavior. That's why I say in Life in Chains, life off the chain is just an illusion. That statement is not pessimism, it's honesty. And when we accept it, we stop shaming ourselves. Because you realize the struggle isn't moral failure. The struggle is a system, and systems can change. And there was another line in this book that I still come back to because it's pretty true. Not doing is expensive. This means you can avoid your problems for years, but one day you will pay in anxiety, you'll pay in health, you'll pay in relationships, and you might even pay in regret. The Life in Chains taught me something simple. If I want to change my life, I need to first see clearly the chains in my life. Then came Life in Words. And this is where things started shifting from the outside to the inside. Because after Life in Chains, I was thinking, this is pretty cool. Now I know why people do what they do. Now I can design my own environment better. I can build better habits. I can stop being a mess. And then I realized my external environment wasn't the only thing controlling me. My words were controlling me. My thoughts were controlling me. My internal language was creating the world around me. And Life in Words started with this question. Which words help and which words hurt? That question is so simple, but it's pretty savage when you actually try it out on yourself. Because once you start watching your words, you start seeing how violent they are, not just towards other people, but towards yourself. Words like, I should, I'm a failure, they always, I can never, that proves. And words create identity. Words create sides. Words create being right. This is where the podcast title really started coming about. Because being right is often just being trapped in words. It's being trapped in our interpretation. And the deeper I went into Life in Words, the more I started noticing something even weirder. Silence. That beneath all this language, there's something else. Something prior to our words. That's why later in the book, you have a moment of almost existential honesty. Maybe the question isn't as solid as I thought. Maybe I'm not even sure there's a questioner here. And I love this idea because it tells the truth. Words can clarify reality, but words can also hide reality. So Life in Words taught me if you want peace, you have to watch what you're saying. You have to watch what you're saying inside. Then came Life in Hoops. And this book might be the most important one emotionally, because this is where I finally hit the wall that behavior change alone doesn't solve. The self is too small. The isolated self cannot create a fulfilling life. You can optimize your habits, you can control your thoughts, and you still feel empty. You still feel disconnected, and you still feel like something is missing. And in Life in Hoops, it begins with a confession and a claim. The answer? Be selfless. But it immediately adds the truth that being selfless is a process. Because selflessness sounds beautiful until your ego gets touched, until your pride gets challenged, until someone disagrees with you politically, until someone disrespects you, and then suddenly you find yourself thinking, no, I'm right, they are wrong. So Life in Hoops is really about expanding the self, not dissolving into nothingness, but widening the hoop, widening the circle. That's why you build a nested structure: self, family, friends, tribe, community, world. That's the hoop model. And it's very relevant right now, because the world feels like everyone's hoop shrank. Everyone's hoop got tight. Everyone's hoop became me and my people. And then being right becomes survival. The Life in Hoops taught me you don't heal by winning. You heal by belonging. And then most recently, my fourth book, The Science of Religion, The Religion of Science, a study in being right. And this one is the most dangerous to talk about because it touches everything: religion, science, God, meaning, truth. And what I was really writing about was certainty. That certainty is the underlying drive in religion and science when they go wrong. When religion goes wrong, it becomes rigid certainty. When science goes wrong, it becomes rigid certainty. And in both cases, being right becomes more important than being honest. That's why I wrote, this book is not meant to beat an argument or to be an argument. This is a very critical realization for my own life. I can turn anything into an argument, even arguing against arguing. It's not just me. Our culture is addicted to this. It's addicted to gotcha. It's addicted to winning. But winning isn't wisdom. Winning doesn't heal. Winning just reinforces the small self. I quote my late hero, Todd Snyder, and say, I'm not trying to change your mind about anything. I'm trying to ease my own mind about everything. That's the whole help self process. That's the whole reason Being Right exists as a podcast. Because if I can ease my own mind, I can stop trying to use certainty to sedate myself. If I can stop doing that, maybe somebody else will pick up these crumbs along the path and notice their own discertainty. So here's what Being Right is going to be. It's going to be the place where we talk about behavior, philosophy, science, religion, relationship, parenting, culture, community, imagination, without turning those topics into a battlefield. This is not a debate show. This is not pick a side. This is a show for people who want to see the mechanism underneath the argument, the mechanism underneath their own certainty. Because being right is never just intellectual. It is emotional. It's protective. It's reinforced. It's a loop. Being right is a flat circle. And this podcast is going to bring guests from all over the place. Scientists, religious thinkers, psychologists, teachers, behavior analysts, writers. The point is always going to be the same. to hold the question long enough to become more honest. Because if you're listening to this right now, I'm guessing that you already know. The pursuit of being right is not free. It costs you the ability to listen. It costs you the ability to learn. And it costs you peace. Might even cost you relationships. And the wild thing is, sometimes we don't even enjoy being right. We just can't stop. So if that's you, welcome. You're in the right place. Let me close with the help self process one more time, but I'm going to say it in a real life kind of way, because this isn't just about theory. This is what you do when your nervous system is lit up, when you're mad, when you're ashamed, when you're certain, when you're scared, when someone challenges your worldview, when your spouse says something that hits your ego, when your kid does something that triggers you, and when the internet tries to drag you into outrage. Here's what you do. Hold the question. Don't rush the answer. Observe what comes up. Let the muddy mind water settle, and then act from clarity. The act doesn't always look heroic. Sometimes the act is silence. Sometimes the act is, I don't know. Sometimes the act is, I was wrong. Sometimes the act is, tell me more. Sometimes the act is, I love you more than I love winning. That's the help self process.